take to truly rise from trauma, from stigma, from the age of despair. I'm your host, Shreya. Tonight on Inner Peace Better Health, we sit with Ellen Busch, trauma survivor, life coach, and author of Disempowered. From the silence of abuse to the grit of Navy SEAL training, Ellen's journey isn't just about survival, it's about choosing to thrive. Her story reminds us that healing isn't linear, but it is possible. And it starts with one brave decision to begin. Welcome, welcome, Ellen, to my show, and I'm honored to have you on my show.
Well, thank you. And I'm honored to be on your show as well. It's a great
Thank you
introduction.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words. And Ellen, you describe your healing beginning with a moment of clarity on a crowded highway. Can you take us back to the moment? What shifted in you?
Sure. I actually call it my surrender point. And I had escaped from an abusive husband. I was beginning the divorce process. And I was really struggling. And I didn't understand why I was struggling so much. And I realized that I needed to take a long, hard look at myself and understand why these things happened in the first place. And I knew that I had to do the work. Otherwise, I was at risk of it happening again. And if I didn't understand why it happened in the first place, I couldn't prevent it from happening again. And I got lucky to survive it the first time, and I might not get to survive it the second time. So I actually looked up at the sky and surrendered. And I surrendered and realized, to a higher power. And it was that moment that life started to get better, but I needed to do the work. I needed to get to work.
That's moment must have been very intense for you. And like, was it fear or intuition or something else that gave you that inner permission to change?
That's a great question. I just knew I couldn't continue on the same path that I was on. I just knew that my life was at risk
Yes.
and I needed to do something different. And I didn't know what to do. So I turned to a higher power.
Yeah, that's so true. And so sorry for my mistake. And
No worries.
uh, you worked through trauma, dyslexia, and the pain of an abusive relationship. Which limiting belief was the hardest to release, and why it's hardest?
For me, the reason why I ended up in the abusive marriage, was because I had so low self-esteem and low self-worth. And that was the most limiting belief. And these ideas were imposed on me as a dyslexic. And that's what I had to let go of.
Hmm.
And it was through working through with a coach, actually. And he was so kind, and he said to me, Ellen, you're such an amazing person. You've done so many great things. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm dyslexic. I'm brain damaged. And he just looked at me, and it must have been the right moment. And he said, Ellen, that is the biggest bunch of BS I have ever heard. And you have been gaslighted into believing that. And that's when it shifted, because all of a sudden I had to take that in.
Yeah.
And I was stunned. For about 2 weeks, I was in shock when he said that to me. And I had to begin to work through releasing that belief.
Yes. And that's a very intense thing that you have gone through, and you survived it. So thanks to you and for sharing all your story, that I think many of our listeners will also get the courage to survive. And also, how did that belief show up in your day-to-day life before you named it?
Oh gosh, it probably showed up in every way that I can imagine. Um, I had no self-confidence. I didn't believe in myself. So how do you function as an adult and build a career and take care of yourself and even be in a healthy relationship when you have no self-confidence and no self-worth? They're contradictory. It just doesn't work. And I found myself sabotaging myself all over the place, because when I would have some success or something would go well, I didn't believe I was worthy of it. It was very subconscious, but it was showing up in the real world constantly. It also made me very vulnerable to bullies and predators.
Mm. Yes, yes. That belief sounds so heavy. And also, I have like another question. Like, training with Navy SEALs sound extreme. What did that physical intensity teach you about emotional healing?
Sure. So the training program that I've been a part of is led by Commander Mark Devine, who's a retired Navy SEAL, and his program is for civilians.
Okay.
Now he does have programs for um, men who are candidates for special operations, but it's a different program. But it is intense when you do the physical part of the training. But what it taught me is that when we get uncomfortable with trusted trainers, therapists, people who are qualified to support us, and also with a team that's supporting you, you realize that you are, as Mark would say, you're 20 times more capable than you think you are. And that's when things start to open up. And then taking on new challenges isn't quite as scary because you have this new knowing of being capable.
That's
Does that answer your question?
yes, yes, and that's such a powerful parallel. And also with that, I have another question in my mind, that did that
Sure.
discipline and discomfort translate to the inner battles as well?
Can you
Uh,
kind of expand on that a little bit? Sure.
yes, like uh when you did that program, that the Navy SEAL program, you have gone through that discipline, and maybe when that physical task that you have been doing, you may have gone through some discomfort. Does that translate to the inner battles as well that you are going through?
It does. It does. So I learned that if I could take on an external challenge, and if I was 20 times more capable, which I found out I was, through an external challenge, then I could take on an internal challenge, such as healing and learning to thrive again. With that said, doing it in an appropriate manner with credentialed therapists, specialists who have your best interest in mind, and coaches who have certifications. It's really important, and I want to emphasize this. But when you take on a challenge, make sure that people who you choose to work with have credentials and are really good at what they're doing. There's a lot of charlatans out there, and if something doesn't feel right, walk away.
Yeah.
Trust it. Trust that instinct.
Yes, yes, that's so true, because those kinds of things that we actually tells everything to them and we surrender ourselves to them. But if those credentials are not right, then maybe that led with something bad, and we may end up in a horrible situation. So that's
Yeah.
a very nice insight that you have told. And let's talk about your book. So, in your book, you speak of reclaiming your voice. How did that show up in your personal and professional life once you did it?
Oh gosh, it showed up in so many ways. With this new confidence, I felt solid and grounded in my body. And when I was able to do that, speaking out was and speaking my truth and being authentic came very naturally. And when I can do that personally and professionally, that just opens up all kinds of doors and avenues. And that's when we begin to learn to thrive. A lot of my story is not just about healing and not just about surviving. And so many of us survive something terrible. And then we get stuck and we don't know how to move forward into that thriving world and recreate the life or create the life that we want and we deserve.
Yes. Yeah, I think like not exactly, but I have gone through that phase also. Like in I was in school and I survived something, and then I got really stuck in my life. Like I had no clue what to do next and how to restart. So then I started reading many books, and I started listening to many podcasts, and there were some people like you who really helped me to restart my life. And I think for them, yeah, for them I'm here today, and it's so necessary to come to and speak about our lives and also to inspire others, because we don't know like what thing actually inspire others in our lives. So thanks to you also for that. And what does having a voice mean to you today as a coach and an author?
It means being authentic and putting myself out there in the world as I'm meant to do. It is empowering. And my reason for choosing the title is my being empowered is not just for me. It's about helping every reader, listener who hears my story. My purpose in life is to empower others. And you cannot do that without a confident, authentic voice.
That reclamation is so true, and this is life changing also. And what advice do you offer someone who is standing at the edge, feeling disempowered but unsure where or how to begin?
That's a great question, and I have been there. Um, I think the first thing I would say is learn to breathe. A breath practice, a simple breath practice, and there are so many out there. One that I use that again comes from Mark Divine is box breathing. But there are multiple breath practices out there. And doing that consistently, it can be just 5 minutes a day. That will start to calm down your nervous system. And when you calm down your nervous system, life gets a lot easier. And you can start to have some insights. And you can start to understand what you're dealing with. And then finding a team of a coach, a credentialed therapist, people who you trust to help you begin to move through the healing process. It's very important. The other thing I want people to understand is that it's going to take time. And it needs to take time. You can't just take a pill and say, oh, I'm empowered and I'm healed. It doesn't work like that. And what happens too is it affects, like I said, our nervous system. It gets into our bodies. And it takes time as we heal for that energy to come out and to move into a new dynamic, a new place of being. And that really needs to happen slowly. It cannot happen overnight, because I think if it did, we'd be in shock. We wouldn't be able to function. My healing journey really took 10 years. And I know that there's people out there who probably don't want to hear that. And now everybody's going to be different. But that's what it takes. It may take less, take more. I'm still doing healing. And I got out of my marriage in 2012.
It's a long time.
It is a long time. But what's happened now is probably a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, it really started to transmute. And the healing continues, like you said, it's not linear, but there becomes an unfolding or a self-discovery, and the thriving process starts to become bigger than the healing process itself. And that's when it gets really exciting, because you start to understand who you are as a human being. What's authentic, what makes you unique, and your own heart. And when you start to understand your own heart, that is empowering. And it's really being a human being that you are meant to be on this earth.
Yes, yes. That age can feel lonely, but it will take time to heal, because healing is not a very instant process. It will take time. Definitely, it will take time. And is there a first step they can take even while still afraid?
Well, like I said, the breathing practice is absolutely critical. And most, it really is. And again, a consistent breathing practice. And ask for help. I think those two things are the most important. And if it's a trusted family member, just you've got to find some help. This is not a journey that's meant to be done alone, I believe. And through human connection with other people who may be going through a healing process or who can simply support you, but when you can authentically connect with another human being, that in itself is healing. Because it's a connection through our humanity.
Yes. Yes, that's so true. And you just mentioned about the breathing and the box breathing process. So, if my listeners don't find something about the breathing process, can you just guide them, like what is the box breathing is and how to do that? Just to explain that shortly.
Sure. So in box breathing you want to be relaxed and centered, usually in a seated position with your head tucked in slightly. So your spine is straight. And you want to slowly inhale from maybe 3 to 5 seconds. Deep, full breath. Hold for a count of 4, and then release slowly for a count of 4 or 5. And then at the bottom of that breath, you want to hold again for that same count, whatever count that you choose. And then you continue. And then inhale again, slowly for 4 seconds. Hold for 4, and then release for 4. There are apps out there. There are YouTube videos. Now, one thing I would also add, if somebody is dealing with trauma or post-traumatic stress, when you do that breath hold at the top, that may be very uncomfortable. It may be very unnerving. It may be triggering. So you can omit that, and you can simply go to 4 count or 5 count in, 4 count or 5 count out, and then back in, and then back out. So finding what is comfortable with you, but if you have trauma, that breath hold may be triggering. So it is absolutely appropriate to omit that if that works, if that's important to you. And there are specialists out there. One who I can recommend who is in your part of the world, his name is Luke Tan. He is in Singapore, and he is actually a breath coach.
Okay.
And you can find him online and on LinkedIn. And actually, later on I can send you his information, but he is a coach of mine and a dear friend, and he travels all over the world and does seminars on different breath techniques.
Thank you for explaining that so nicely and beautifully. I think this will really help my listeners. And if at this moment you have to give a message or tell something to all the listeners who's listening to this podcast, what would you say?
I would say I understand what you're going through. I understand what some people call the dark night of the soul. You're not alone. Many people experience these terrible times and terrible truth. What the good news is, you can recover, you can heal, you can grow, and you can learn to thrive again. You can do it, but it's going to take work. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take looking for new solutions, not doing the same thing over and over again. That doesn't work. But you really can do it. There is hope. And when you begin the process, it may be a journey of 1,000 miles. But those first few steps, you will start to feel better right away. And what I've learned is that every step in the process, I just started to feel better and better and better and better. But it's going to take time. But just know you can do it no matter how far down in the hole you may feel. It can get better if you're willing to commit and do the work.
Thank you for such nice words. And it's true that healing is not an instant thing. It takes time, but you have to be consistent about it. And if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Sure. I'm pretty easy to find. I am on LinkedIn, Facebook. I have a webpage, and it's very easy. Now it's ellenbusch.com. But here in the States, our family joke is that it's Busch, which is just like the German beer. Instead of instead of President Bush, which is Bush. So it's kind of a family joke.
Yeah, that's so nice.
So it's ellenbusch.com. And then if you just Google me, you can find my website. You can find my book on Amazon. I'm on Audible, Instagram at ebush1500. So please reach out to me. I am available for coaching, and I'm available for questions. And, I can send you to resources like Mark Devine's Unbeatable Mind or Luke Tan's Breath Practice, his program. So I have resources that I can refer you to.
Yes. And I will make sure to attach all the links and details below so that our users can find that easily and reach out to you easily. And with that, we have come to the end. And thank you for sharing so much, the plethora of knowledge that you have. And I think this story will really inspire my listeners who are maybe stuck or maybe going through the same process. And to my listeners, Ellen Busch shows us that healing is a fierce act of love. Love for self, for truth, for what's possible beyond survival. So if you are listening from the edge, unsure if your story can be rewritten, let this be your sign. You are not broken, you are becoming. And peace isn't the end of the journey. It's the path you get to choose, starting from now. Thank you.